Hi there, I'm James, and this is Outpost Terminal. Today, I'm spending a little bit of extra time to talk through sort of some interview questions with Nick of Nyris Games, the producer, developer of Deep Space Outpost, which I've recently had a couple videos go live, and was able to do a text-based interview with him. And I just wanted to kind of recover all of what he had talked about, his responses. If you saw the previous video, you'll know that there were a couple pieces that we talked about during the latest playthrough, but I wanted to give a dedicated session here to his specific answers and make sure that we give you kind of as much access to what he was thinking about as he worked on this. So the very first kind of section here is about like the origins of the game, his inspiration for the game. And we talked a little bit about how the game started as a prototype back in 2020. I asked him what the original idea was, kind of specific game or story that sort of sparked that moment. And his full answer there was like, this game is actually, was kind of started as a prototype in 2020 when he was messing around in Game Maker. He came from a C and C++ background, and he's always loved 2D strategy games. So he put a lot of hours into FTL, Base DF9, and Genesis Alpha 1, and that was around that 2020 timeframe. And he basically wanted to see what happened when you combine those. I commented in the playthrough video before this, but I think there's something here that's really important. A good artist can produce all of the technical artifacts, right? If it's a painter, they possess the brush technique. If it's a musician, they possess the ability to play their instrument in a way that others find appealing. But a great artist takes inspiration from a lot of things around them and says, well, what if I combine this? What if I redefine it? And I think that's what Nick has done here. So I wanted to offer kind of a big kudos for that opening statement. The next question was sort of space station builders. Like, they are a crowded genre. What did you want Deep Space Outpost to do differently that you weren't seeing somewhere else? Right? And he said that really they weren't crowded back when he started, or at least that wasn't what he thought of at the time. There were older ones, like maybe like Startopia or Space Colony, but he really genuinely feels like there's room for something new. And I think that was a reasonable like challenge to my question there. I think he's not wrong. There are a lot of games with a space theme, but that is different from games that like are specifically this technically deep. His next question, I said the game leans into real production chain and life support. We talked about this one a little bit in the playthrough. Droids first, then humans. What like put him in that layered approach rather than just the simple resource loop? And his answer was that he wants something much more grounded, more realistic, but still in that clear science fiction category. His thinking was like, when we send things out to the outer reaches, right? We send droids, not people first. He even cited The Expanse, and he thinks that it's great that it does sci-fi, but it doesn't do it in a silly way. And that was kind of the tone he was aiming for. He also talked about looking back at the earliest itch.io builds like of the game, which were available and still are out there, versus the game that launched on July 14th. What's the biggest way that evolved, right? And his answer was that, like, honestly, the core vision hasn't changed a huge amount since it went into early access, right? So during the early prototyping phases, though, he said he went on kind of completely different build systems and iterated through them. Some of those would have made for a very, very different game if he'd stuck with them. So I think that's interesting, and as a personal and professional advocate for like iterating on yourself and your systems, it's nice to see that like that paid off here, I think, in spades. Next, we talked a little bit about the studio itself, Nyris Games, right? So I just had a handful of questions, but the first was, Nyris Computer Services has been around since 2006, doing mostly like business software work. What made you start building games under the same roof? And like, how does that background influence your approach to game development? And his answer was that he's been in software for quite a while, right? And he's always been a gamer, and he just kind of messed around with making games as a kid. And then later in 2020, he just finally decided to give it a proper go. And I appreciate that. I am a similar spirit, except that I am not a developer by trade, right? So I do work in the software space, but I am also very interested to see kind of how this influences his thoughts as he continues, right? We carry a lot of what we've learned. So I asked, being a solo developer on a project of this size, right? It's got a lot in it. It's a big undertaking. What does the day-to-day process look like? And did you lean on outside collaborators? And he says he is a pretty organized planner. He keeps a task list kind of daily that feeds into the bigger milestones. He's not truly fully solo on everything though. Like, he's contracted artists and translators, and he's brought in like asset packs for graphics, music, or sound effects. So like, I think it's easy in the like breakout indie dev world to almost discard this like leaning on the tools like mindset. And the reality is, this is a single person putting a lot of effort into how they make this as good of a game as possible. And I think it's way too reactionary for someone to feel negatively about that. We have seen that this is a truly unique experience. If you haven't seen it, certainly go check out the videos. I have 2 of them. One is on the demo, one is on the full game, picking up where my demo experience left off. And like, the way that these mechanics work together is something that is unique. That is like the art of software development, if you want to even take it outside of the frame of gaming. So alongside Deep Space Outpost, he has a couple other titles that he worked on, and he noted that those earlier prototypes, so these include Town of Thieves and Upheaval, very different games, right? One is a crime management game, the other one is a military or diplomatic simulation game. Like, how did he decide what got the attention? He just said they really were just learning exercises. Upheaval was a strategy game, sort of a reimagining of the old Amiga games. Town of Thieves came out when he was playing Lords of Waterdeep. He really likes the mechanics in that and wanted to play around with it. I think that's exactly how like really inventive developers work, is they just play with the mechanics and say, did that work? Maybe it didn't. Maybe I won't continue with it. But if it did, as I think it did with DSO, we're going to see it grow. Right? And then last one in that section. So I said, is there a common thread, like a design philosophy or a type of like player experience that runs through all of the stuff that Nyris Games has made? And his honest answer, which I really appreciate this, I would love to see more like studios, even at the studio level, have this kind of earnestness. He just says, I haven't really sat down and thought about it as a philosophy. It's just that strategy and simulation games interest him, and that kind of is the through line. I think that's being genuine in a way that is easy in the professional marketing world, right? We so often want to like make ourselves sound like we are fully put together and we have every detail nailed down, and we don't. And when you're working on your own, you don't have the ability to lean on other people to cover those spots, so you may as well be earnest and direct. And I really appreciate that. Thank you, Nick, for doing that. So next up, I just had a few questions about the game itself. So this is sort of in the category of Deep Space Outpost as a game. So I said, walk us through like a typical playthrough for someone picking it up for the first time. What's that first hour gonna be like? And he said, honestly, for the first playthrough, it's going through the tutorial. It has a reasonable learning curve. You're sorting things like power production, building rooms, getting a miner out mining ore, running a refinery to turn that into metal and water, setting up your defensive turrets. Like, then you get into processing water and air so life support comes online, which lets traders dock and then visitors disembark. From there, you could start earning credits to spend on research and trading. And honestly, this is exactly the experience that I had in playing it. I was like, well, I'm gonna build this and find out what it did. And I think there is a lot of depth to be explored there. And that depth even lends itself to the other game modes, which we have not looked at on camera here. It lends itself to those. So worth checking out as this continues to mature. Speaking of the modes, we talked in the previous video a little bit about how like there are a few different game modes. There's sort of the sandbox, scenario-based modes as well, and then station builder modes, right? So things go from like rescue to combat operations. And I asked him like what his favorite part was and then like how people responded to it. He really enjoyed getting to build out the procedural generation of like the rescue scenarios because they have to work in a way that makes them solvable. But he did add a kind of, he sees it as a funny story. I honestly see it as genuinely just positivity. Someone told him that survival mode was just too easy. And so like they built a station on the increased asteroids setting, and they couldn't really touch it. So he's going to make an update, add a little bit more difficulty. And I think that's exactly the kind of responsiveness that you can expect to make this game go somewhere, right? I asked a little bit about like procedural generation and like, as you work with that, how do you approach balancing randomness? Because you want the game to be fun, but also fresh. And he's like, it's really not about it being totally random, right? He said there are lots of safeguards that are built in. So like figures stay within reasonable ranges so that no one like finds themselves in a game that turns into an unwinnable mess, right? And I was like, I think that's a little peek underneath the development curtain that is important for us to remember as players, that these things are experientially designed. No game that I know of has ever been able to say full procedural, no guidelines, and it be worth playing for 10 minutes, right? So it's important to remember that it's like the kind of guardrails we apply are what makes this good, and he's done a good job with that. The next question is like, so there is Steam Workshop support already built in. And I was like, yeah, what's it been like seeing people kind of build and share stuff? And responsibly, he kind of calls me on it. He's right. He's like, well, nobody's really found it. Like it's out there, but the game is brand new. So there's probably going to be a lot more content at the time I'm shooting this. So toward the end of July, there's a little bit of content, but not a ton that's out there. So people are beginning to look at it, but if you want to make a name for yourself in this particular space, this would be a good place to start. I asked about, so 2020 is a little while ago. 4 years of early access was a pretty long runway. I just asked, what's a piece of feedback that like really meaningfully changed the game? And he goes, it's always been really constructive stuff. He said he's had people would push back with like, why does this work like this and why not like that? And honestly, more often than not, they were right. And so it became an improvement to his own system. Sometimes when you're the one who built something, you're just used to how it works. Even if it isn't the most intuitive way, it takes someone else pointing it out. And that's a good like philosophy to remember because it's easy to miss when you're so close to the project that you intimately know all the details. Things feel obvious that aren't obvious, and you miss things that should be obvious, right, to others. So just asking as sort of a follow-on to this, I said, it's out in 1.0. The response from players and the press, like, how's that been? Like, has there been a moment that sort of stuck with you? He said, there's been plenty of fixes, but overall, it's really been positive. And I'm glad to hear that, because I think it deserves a very positive review. He said, I think this kind of game isn't for everyone. Some people bounce right off of it, and that's okay. But the people who stick with it, like, will stick and put in serious hours. Having YouTubers play it has helped a lot with visibility. And I think that's what, frankly, for me, that's why I do it. I want to try to help get the people who will enjoy this see it and engage. So check it out. All right, last section. I asked a few quick questions about what's next for Nyris and for Deep Space Outpost, right? I said, like, now that it's out, what does the roadmap look like? We talked a little bit about this question in the previous video, but effectively, the first launch week has been stability work. And then he started on some GUI work and things like improving pathing. You'll see a little bit of that probably have an effect in my second video that has some play there. He's also doing German language support. So for the German language speakers out there, it is coming. And then he wants to do an update to the demo. But after that, he's probably looking at something like a combat update and also mod support, so people can tweak ratios and costs and make it kind of more or less either challenging or complex to keep it interesting for them. So then I asked him a question like, is there a feature or a system that you wanted to have in 1.0, but you've had to save for later? And he goes, there are a couple features that he's holding back, and he wants to keep them as a surprise until he actually gets into building them, but stay tuned. So I fully expect that those will deliver interesting changes to the mechanic overall. And you should stay tuned. Check him out if you want. You can follow him on like the usual socials, on YouTube, all of the locations you would normally find them. Check him out. So for Town of Thieves and Upheaval, and I kind of asked where I was like, is there anything that is happening with those? Like, are people able to follow along as they develop? And he's like, right now, no real updates. There'll be some later in the year. That is, if he gets back to it while he's still adding to Deep Space Outpost. So like, this is perfectly reasonable. And I want to like emphasize that this is normal for developers. Even really big, AAA studios throw a lot of resources at one title, and they have to because those are expensive and difficult titles to make. But they are going to have to run it as a business, right? Like if he gets traction in DSO, I would expect him to stay with DSO, and maybe someday he'll revisit the others. But until then, that makes sense. And lastly, if someone has made it this far and hasn't played Deep Space Outpost yet, what is the thing you would say to get them to try the demo? And I love how direct he is here. He goes, it's a space station base builder. If you like that kind of game, if that sounds like your kind of thing, give the demo a try. That's all he's asking. It's an honest sales pitch that is, if this interests you, check it out. And I think there is much to praise about Nick's approach here. I hope that I will have some more time to spend a little bit longer in the game. I am still learning mechanics and systems. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from this approach in how he's building this game. Much thank you to Nick for spending the time to do this quick interview with me, but even more so for being willing to just engage with a small upstart like me to help promote this and make this something that maybe gets a little more attention as a result of some of this effort. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you learned something from this, or at least feel like you know the developer, Nick, a little bit better from Nyris Games. Be safe, and we will catch you in the next one.